Number 56 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance, pursuant to Standing Order 108-2, and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. The committee is meeting to study Canada Revenue Agency's effort to combat tax avoidance and evasion. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25, and therefore members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. So with that, we'll forego the formalities. We do have a quick motion that we need to deal with for the project budget cost for this set of hearings. Just to give members a heads up at the end of the meeting in the last 15 minutes, I think Mr. St. Marie has distributed a motion to members, and we'll deal with that during the last 15 minutes committee. So the budget, I believe, for this set of hearings for Canada Revenue study on the Canada Revenue Agency's efforts to combat tax avoidance and evasion has been sent to members. It is requesting an amount of $1,800 for this study. The costs are broken down on what has been sent to members. Does somebody want to move that?
I'd be happy to.
Moved by Mr. Kelly. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Good. Thank you. Then we will start.
Okay. Point of order.
Go ahead, Mr.
Chair.
Kelly.
I just for a brief moment. I know there were some very kind words spoken during the sound check on the announcement you made yesterday. But on the record, I would like to just first of all just recognize the fantastic job that you've done as our chair for the last 6 years. I've been sort of off and on this committee, and it's been a delight to participate in this committee with you, Wayne. Wayne, you're a great parliamentarian. You'll be sorely missed. Great your service to community, your service to country, service to your party, service to and for your great judgment. You've never let your party loyalty get in the way of fairness to other parties and get in the way of friendship and or your good humor. So all the best to you in your retirement. And I'm really looking forward to your speech tonight. When we're done here at committee, I'll be zipping off into the chamber, and I'm very keen to hear what you might have to say tonight. So thanks, Wayne. I really appreciate your service.
Thank you, Pat. I should be working on that speech now, probably. Anyway, thank you for that. You guys are embarrassing me. Mr. Julian, go ahead.
I'm going to break all parliamentary rules, Wayne, and just say I was talking about you while I was doing my sound check. You've played such a key role in the Finance Committee. Your stewardship has been amazing because you don't take things personally, even when things get heated, and you're not partisan. What you do is try to get things done, which is really the embodiment of a fine parliamentarian. I think one of the best moments of you with Finance Committee was being down in Prince Edward Island in pre-budget consultations and seeing you in your own element. You will be sorely missed. There are very few parliamentarians, I think, that everyone agrees their absence will be noted, and you are one of them. So I just wanted to praise you for your work and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you all. It's been a blast, and it's a lot of fun. Now let's get to work. So we will start with our first witness, Andre Leroux, Associate Professor, Faculty of Law at Laval University. Go ahead, Andre. The floor is yours.
Bonjour.
Good day, and thank you for the invitation. You know, in a meeting I had a few years ago with Laurent Laplante, he told me, we cannot control what we do not see. And that summarizes the theme of my speech today, which deals with KPMG. The analogy I will make is an analogy about a chef. So when you come up with a recipe, you use a number of ingredients, And separately, they are all good ingredients, but when combined, those ingredients can give you a surprising result and sometimes a disappointing result. And that's exactly what happened with KPMG's planning when it came to tax havens. So you had these companies who were making donations to tax havens, and then they were giving these funds in the form of donations to their investments. So separately, if we look at these as ingredients, there's no problem. There's no problem with the donation. But when you put them together, the result resembles fireworks, and it does not work at all. Brian Arnold was a professor in London, Ontario, and he said that the KPMG strategy was similar to a TFSA account, which was tailored specifically to the wealthy. And on a walk, he was testing out, or rather, he was discussing the planning.
Several $1 million to strangers on some island somewhere, but whenever you want some of that money, you can get it. And you don't pay any Canadian tax. It seems too good to be true. In my experience, most things that seem too good to be true turn out to be untrue. KPMG nous dit avoir
KPMG told us that it set up this strategy where at least $100 million were needed. And then there were also fees that needed to be paid every year. And did KPMG carry out the same strategy elsewhere than the Isle of Man? We do not know. It refuses to say. Since 2003, the strategy was prohibited, and it must be said that this strategy did continue until 2014. It must be said we are now learning. And perhaps it was even practiced in 2015. And we do know that we learned more about KPMG's income because of this strategy in a letter that was sent in 2012. There's the Cooper family, which is a family that went before the courts to challenge the assessment. And not only that, they were bold enough to present a voluntary disclosure. In 2015, they submitted the request for the voluntary disclosure, and the CRA said, "I'm sorry, you are being investigated, and that is not going to fly." And then the court was asked to reassess that CRA request.
Il y a ici, on a entendu beaucoup parler.
And we have heard much recently about the Me Too movement. And this is a movement that raises awareness among people that a criminal act does not cease being a criminal act over time. The crime does not become less severe over time, and crimes must still be brought to justice even after all of this time. Let's apply this to KPMG. KPMG, this firm must be investigated to show exactly how much tax evasion was carried out. The courts must look into this. And there is a theory that exists. It was created by Meads versus Meads in British Columbia in 2012, which is known as UPCA. UPCA deals with people who use an argument with no basis in reality to convince people of their case. To give you an example, tax returns were filled out for certain clients, and losses were fabricated in these returns. The people responsible for these crimes were brought to justice, these fiscal arbitrators. However, KPMG's strategy has not been brought to justice with their fabricated donations.
However, some UPCA pseudo law, other law, is entirely disconnected from mainstream law and represent a something else category of thought, belief, or behavior. Et c'est exactement ce qui s'est produit ici.
This is exactly what we saw here. And what is my conclusion? There must be a public investigation into the KPMG case. It is legal for us to require a public investigation. And if the finding is that there was no tax evasion, so be it. But at the end of the day, people are outraged by what happened, and that is my conclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leroux. I believe is Mr. Vaillancourt on now. I don't see his picture, but there he goes. He's unmuted. Okay, there you go. Claude, floor is yours. Go ahead.
Bonjour, merci.
Good day, and thank you for the invitation. So, ATTAC is the Association for a Tax on Financial Transactions and for Citizen Action, and it is represented in 4 continents and various countries. In Quebec, like elsewhere, ATTAC is particularly concerned by tax issues. Tax justice is essential, in our opinion, for more social justice, better distribution of wealth, and quality public services. Since we are here to evaluate the CRA's efforts to combat tax avoidance and evasion, it is to you, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, that we are addressing our concerns. And it is your own efforts we will be discussing since the agency reports to you. First, we would like to mention that the state of Canada's public finances troubles us. Combating COVID-19 has been very costly and will magnify the budget deficit. Other high expenses are to be anticipated, the eco-transition, which is absolutely necessary for our economic health and for our survival as a species on this planet. And it will require major public investments, for example, for major technological transformations, for saving energy, electrifying transportation, transitioning from fossil fuels, and so on. The budget austerity that has suffocated us in recent years and greatly weakened our ability to react to the pandemic is no longer an option, and this shows how fundamental a role the CRA will play in the coming years and how much the fight against tax avoidance and evasion should be at the heart of our collective concerns. We are concerned that the CRA's funding is still too low. According to Échec aux paradis fiscaux, a Quebec anti-tax haven group, the government has bailed out the agency by $500 million since 2015, an additional $534 million in the last budget. This just about makes up for the $1 billion in cuts made by the Harper government when the need was much greater. The automatic exchange of information, recently put in place, will finally make a gigantic amount of data available. And that will facilitate the work of investigators, but above all, will require a considerable amount of analysis and data processing done by high-level experts, which requires considerable investment. So we propose the CRA's budget be substantially increased, in addition to amounts already allocated, and that the money be devoted to investigations to target the biggest tax evaders, companies and individuals alike. With respect to tax avoidance, we strongly believe in the effectiveness of a register of beneficial owners. Under the following conditions, access to the regime must be free and easy for public access. The information published must give a full, clear picture of the identity of beneficial owners. Resources must be dedicated, adequate resources to verify the information provided, and the threshold must be at 10% of the share of the target company, reflecting the distinction between foreign direct investment and portfolio investment proposed by Statistics Canada. A 25% threshold is too high, such as that in the UK, and has never achieved scientific consensus as to its effectiveness. We appreciate the G7 proposal for global minimum corporate tax as a good way to combat tax avoidance and the strategy of transfer pricing. However, 15% minimum tax rate seems too low and could end up increasing tax competition between states that have good taxation. Furthermore, this rate, intended for multinationals only, makes us fear that they will be given preferential treatment at the expense of citizens and SMEs, whereas major efforts should be made to achieve true tax progressiveness. The decisions you will have to make concerning the CRA will be vital for the coming years in order to ensure more social justice and better environmental protection. Progress has been made. However, it is far from sufficient. It will be critical to do everything possible to eradicate tax havens. We hope you will take the necessary steps for Canada to become a world leader on these issues rather than continuing to take a passive wait-and-see position that has unfortunately been taken for far too long. Thank you very much. That is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vaillancourt. Then we'll turn to the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada, starting with Mr. St. Jean, the President and CEO, and Bruce Ball is here, Vice President, Taxation. Floor is yours.
So thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. It's truly a pleasure to be to address this committee today and to be here in a different role than in the past. As a former Controller General of Canada, I've worked with many of you, many parliamentarian and senior government officials, and I'm very pleased to deliver these remarks today to the committee as the President and CEO of CPA Canada. Today, to sit with me is my colleague, Bruce Ball, who is the Vice President, Taxation of CPA Canada. Before I start, I will just allow me to congratulate you, Mr. Chair, on your 28 years of services to Canada and your own provinces. CPA Canada has always appreciated working with you, and we wish you the very best for the future. CPA Canada is the national organization that represents Canada's CPA profession nationally and internationally. It supports the CPA provincial and territorial accounting organization across Canada, which have statutory authority to regulate the profession, 220,000 members. Among its many activities, CPA Canada's mission is to act in the public interest and to contribute to the economic and social development. CPA Canada has always maintained a good working relationship with the government, including Finance Canada and the CRA. Throughout the pandemic, our collaboration with the federal government has reached new levels. We have been educating members and providing them with tools they need to support individuals and small businesses in navigating key government support programs. We've also been providing advice and expertise on where improvement are most needed. And we've been working also to find solutions so that those who are eligible for the benefits are able to receive them. CPA Canada
CPA Canada believes the tax system in Canada is an important policy mechanism to support Canada's economic recovery and efforts to build back better. CPA Canada has long called for a comprehensive tax review to make a complex tax system easier for Canadians to understand and comply with. This is important because Canadians and all of our overall quality of life is supported when everyone pays their fair share. As part of its professional commitment to serve the public interest, CPA Canada has consistently taken a strong stand against tax evasion and other financial crimes. They are illegal, unethical, and harmful to the economy and societies worldwide.
Not victimless crimes. Real people are armed. And it's heart-wrenching to hear the story of those on whom these crimes have taken a terrible toll on their health, their well-being, their families, and also their life savings. Our position on financial crime is clear. It's on the public record. CPA Canada works with the Canadian government and international organizations to improve tax regimes, combat money laundering, and strengthening financial systems to counter criminal activities. For example, CPA Canada has provided input in the OECD and the B20 and participated in the private sector consultative forum on the Financial Action Task Force. We've also appeared many times before this committee and the Senate National Finance Committee calling for a comprehensive tax review, and both committees have endorsed our recommendation. CPA Canada has also served on the Ministers of National Revenue Underground Economic Advisory Committee. And we work also to strengthen Canada's anti-money laundering regime through multiple government submissions, our representation, the Finance Canada Advisory Committee on Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing, and most recently, the participation in the Cullen Commission Public Inquiry in BC. CPA
Canada has also actively participated in government consultations to strengthen corporate beneficial ownership transparency since the discussions began in 2018. We are pleased to see the government's commitment to implement a public registry of beneficial ownership in the recent budget. We believe transparency is a critical factor in the fight to combat financial crime. We also welcome the federal government's commitments to increase tax compliance, strengthen the integrity of the tax system, and ensure tax fairness.
In the 2021 budget to fund new initiative and extend existing program will help to crack down on tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance and enhance CRA's ability to collect outstanding taxes in timely manner. These are important steps forward. Yet more action is needed from all of us. We all share this responsibility. In the fight against tax evasion, we must realize that Canada's tax system is overly complex. We need to continue to simplify Canada's tax system, and we encourage this committee to continue with those conversations and your recommendation. In a nutshell, simplification makes compliance much easier. As always, CPA Canada is ready to work with parliamentarians to advance this effort. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Mr. Ball and I welcome your questions. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. St. Jean. And as you know, we recommended a comprehensive tax review at this committee a couple of times ourselves. The list for questions, so we'll be starting with Mr. Falk, Mr. Fragascatis, Mr. St. Marie, and Mr. Julian. So Ted, 6-minute round is yours.
Well, maybe give me 6 minutes, 15 seconds to start with, and give me just a brief moment to thank you for your many years of service to not only your constituents, but your province and your country. I remember 7.5 years ago when I first was elected to the House here, and we were together on the Public Accounts Committee. You sat in the opposition side all by your lonesome as a Liberal. And I just remember what a statesman you were as an opposition member. And now I've got to enjoy you as a committee chair, and I've found you to be as much, if not even more statesman-like. You've been courteous, you've been respectful, you've been tolerant, and certainly I think you've been nonpartisan in the adjudication of your position. So I thank you, Wayne, and I thank you for your friendship. And you've not let your job interfere with your friendships, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, now I want my 6 minutes to start.
You get it.
All right. Thank you to all of our witnesses here for testifying at committee. I've appreciated the input that you've had into this very important topic that we're discussing about combating tax avoidance and evasion. And Mr. LaRue, I was particularly interested in your analysis of the KPMG situation and the tax havens that the Fifth Estate has tried to document for Canadians and some of the folks that have found themselves out their life savings and the hardships that have been created by that tax scheme that was entered into by many unscrupulous people there with the help of KPMG, it appears. So my question, though, I'm going to move past that, Mr. LaRue, and I want to ask you a question about the more current environment that we have. The Prime Minister, in his 2019 mandate letter to the Minister of National Revenue, the minister was instructed to seek new ways to counter tax avoidance and evasion typically used by wealthy individuals, and enhance also our existing tax avoidance and evasion whistleblower programs, look for more opportunities to invest resources to crack down on tax evaders. And I'm wondering, Mr. LaRue, in your opinion, has the government taken meaningful action in accomplishing that objective?
Well, what has been done is a way, in the right direction. Yes, it is, but it is not enough, because you say you may want to crack down on tax evasion. However, if you don't have the means to find the people who practice tax evasion, well, you will never find them. And this is the main problem, you see, because our court system, in fact, not only the court system, but CRA and Justice Canada are way too lenient towards tax evasion. You see, Professor Arthur Cockfield mentioned that in a publication recently that in the U.S. We know that KPMG had a almost $500 million fine in 2005. Well, you would never see that in Canada. Why? Because we don't work this way, unfortunately. You see, so the measures that were taken were good measures, but what we have to focus on now is what people that hide money. And if you don't do anything against KPMG, well, the answer, the consequence of that is that, well, the large firms will feel, well, let's do it again. There's no, consequence to what we're doing.
Okay, yeah, and you've alluded a little bit to the United States, the amount of money that was issued there against KPMG. How do we compare to other jurisdictions in the treatment of going after people that are looking to tax evade?
I haven't studied I've been retired from university for the last 4 years. I haven't studied recently what has been done in other countries. I cannot, have the.
Okay, maybe, and maybe another question. We have tax treaties with other jurisdictions.
Yeah, yes.
Can you talk 95. A little bit about how maybe that actually facilitates tax evasion and avoidance or?
Well, it facilitates this, communication, discussions with other countries. But if you don't have a tax treaty with most of tax havens, then you don't have the communication, you don't have the information, and that's a problem. Well, yes, with other 95 or so countries that we have tax treaty with, it's easier, but unfortunately, you don't have those treaties with tax haven countries.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. I'm going to shift my questions over to Mr. St. Jean from the Chartered Professional Association of Canada. You talked a lot about, and part of your presentation to this committee several times has been to do a complete tax system overhaul. And can you comment a little bit how you would envision a tax overhaul would help in addressing the issue of tax evasion and tax avoidance?
Thank you very much, Mr. Members. Well, I'll start the answer to this question to say that I'll ask my colleague, Mr. Bell, to complete. When we look to say at the overall tax code in Canada, it's over 3,000 pages. 3,000 pages to see the Canadian to say got. It's very, very difficult to see for people to see to comprehend to see the various complexities in the tax code. So to see having a better definition of the taxable income, better definition to see of various streams of income to see would be quite helpful. But maybe I could ask to say my colleagues, Bruce Wallace, to provide some perspective on how to go about it specifically. Maybe Bruce, if you could complement that question.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. We were looking for an independent process, so but also with the input of the government, and basically to have a look at all the tax rules. So you know, consider whether they made sense. Do a review of all our expenditures, tax expenditures, for example. Make sure that where we do have tax expenditures, they're actually working. Identify areas that are complicated in the tax rules. You know, there's been a lot of discussion about smaller companies and small businesses having trouble complying because of complexity. So see if we can simplify that sort of thing. There have been issues in terms of individuals getting access to benefits as well. So again, reviewing the system of tax credits and the tax benefits for the lower income individuals and make sure they're able to access that as well. So generally do a complete review. It's been 50 years and 2 years. I think it's long overdue.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, Ted, we are a minute over.
Oh, okay.
Even with giving you that first comment back to zero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You've been generous as usual.
Mr. Fragascatis, followed by Gabriel St. Marie. Peter?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will begin in the same way, and I think you have to get used to it, Chair. It's just one of these things. I know you're modest, you don't like the attention on you, but it's the reality. I think we all share a level of respect for you, Wayne, that can really not be expressed in words. You're an example for all MPs, particularly newer MPs like myself. I think whenever this time in office comes to an end for me, whenever that might be, if I can look back on it and say that I was half as good of an MP as Wayne Easter, then I'll have achieved a great deal, Wayne. So thank you for everything that you've done. You. It's greatly appreciated. If I could begin with Mr. Leroux, and actually it's a question I'll put to you, sir, and to Mr. Valancourt as well as Mr. Saint-Jean, and that relates to international jurisdictions. To be simple about it, who does it well? Who, if we look at countries that have put in place measures to effectively deal with the challenge of avoidance and evasion, where can we best look to? And I'll start with Mr. Leroux and go to Mr. Valancourt and round out with Mr. Saint-Jean.
Well, they all have problems with people who hide money. Obviously, the U.S. put more money into the IRS, and their penalties are much more severe than what we have here. The European Union tries as a whole, all the countries of the Union, they try, but obviously each country individually have the same problem because you cannot find what is hidden. So they all have the same problem. So nobody has a perfect score, but the penalties being more important in the US, then it gives them maybe an advantage because the criminals will be less inclined to act there.
Mr. Vilcor?
Oui, ben moi, je pense qu'un des problèmes.
Yes, I think that one of the current problems is that no one is doing anything. So one country will react just as much as another does, but then we're in this passive spiral and it's very counterproductive. That's why in our text, we ask for Canada to become a leader, to really take its place. So we have the Joe Biden, a government which is more active on the tax haven matter. What's interesting there is that the United States equivalent of the CRA is much more heavily funded. It would be about 30 times more heavily funded. So more money is needed to be invested to fight against tax evasion. I think that that's very worthwhile to consider. If the states do it, why don't we?
Mr. St. Jean?
Yeah, thank you. So I think just to build on what the Professor Larue said, nobody's got the magic formula. To date, how to deal with this. It's a very complex matter, and criminals have different ways of doing it. So, is there some better practices in various countries? But nobody has the perfect solution. Higher penalty to see could be part to see of the solution, but better exchange of data, better treaties are also part to see the solution. So it's a very complex to see that issue to see that cannot be solved quickly to see by a bâton magique to see
The magic wand.
And I'll stay with Mr. Saint Jean if I could. Mr. Saint Jean, any thoughts on international tax treaty reform, if you could share with us?
Well, maybe on that one to say my colleague, to see Bruce Ball, to say is the expert that's in all the taxation issues to see much more than I do to see. So maybe I could ask Bruce to see to help me out with this one here.
Okay, this is really tied in, I think, to the previous point. When I look at the situation, I look at what the CRA has compared with other countries. So, Mr. Galvin laid out what CRA has been doing recently, and there's more coming. There's more mandatory reporting and that sort of thing. I think the biggest thing is access to information. So that's a key part of tax treaties, is the ability to share information with other countries, and that is happening with country by country reporting and that sort of thing. So there is more discussion going on among tax administrators around the world. So I think that's a key part. Penalties obviously are important, but I think also just transparency as well. So in addition to the international reporting, we're also looking at a corporate registry in Canada. I think you have to look at all these things combined. I don't think there's one sort of magic solution to the issue.
Thank you very much. Time remaining, Chair?
You got a little over a minute.
Okay, perfect. And if I could, I'll remain with Mr. Saint Jean. I do take your point, Mr. Valancourt, about resources, but I'm happy to see that this government has pivoted in important ways. We did see the previous government under Mr. Harper make very significant cuts to the CRA. Mr. Saint Jean, you've talked about the most recent budget 2021, and a number of measures there to deal with this problem of avoidance and evasion. I wonder if you could expand on that and talk about the potential here that we have through the budget to deal with the problem in a meaningful way. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. This is the recent budget 2021 is providing significant new resources or additional resources to the CRA, and this is very, very much welcome. There's more resources on the legal side to see that are also provided to the department, and also more help to see on the way to see for a better system to see to track better use of with artificial intelligence to see of patterns. So these are all measures that will be helpful. So the money and the people that have been promised in the budget are very welcome and will make a difference, no question.
Thank you to you all.
Okay.
Maybe I'll jump in if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Bruce.
Okay. There were a number of important changes in the budget. I mentioned the mandatory reporting, so there'll be more requirements to report transactions and plans that are more aggressive. They're going to have a list of transactions and also the nature of transactions, how they're, whether they meet one out of three hallmarks. They're also going to be doing more on the international side. There's a proposal to deal with hybrid mismatches, which has been a large international issue over the years, and interest deductibility as well. And there's a review of the general anti-avoidance rule coming as well. That'll be significant in addition.
Okay, thank you all. Gabriel St. Marie, followed by Mr. Julian. We're on a 6-minute round. Gabriel?
Oui, merci, monsieur.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So greetings to all of our witnesses with us. So thank you for being with us today. You are really bringing such interesting aspects to contribute to our committee's work. I also would like to start with a few words for Wayne. Wayne, you're an exemplary chair and parliamentarian. It is a pleasure to sit with you. I find you strict but always fair. And I am reeling from the news that you won't be there next time. You will certainly be missed. Thank you for everything. And we will still have the chance to have our squabbles for the next few meetings. So thank you so much. My first question is for Mr. Larreau. And perhaps Mr. Vaillancourt or Saint-Jean could add something. Please don't hesitate if so. Mr. Larreau, so you answered Mr. Fox's question. You said that it's very important in the KPMG affair not to remain passive, because if nothing is done, a message is sent that these corporations will not be punished when they use such shell company strategies and so forth. In your opinion, what could be done by the minister? You talked about her investigative power. What could be done by the government and what can be done by the committee? Thank you. You are on mute.
Okay, quand on parle
Okay, so when we're talking about tax evasion, no matter what the number of provisions in the Act, because you know, evasion is a crime. So if there are provisions that prohibit crime, well, we still need to identify criminals. So what I say is it's best to be proactive. It's necessary, that is to say, to discourage people who would be inclined to commit such a crime. So for as long as the CRA will be giving golden bridges, for example, to KPMG clients, for example, the voluntary disclosures, etc., you're basically gift wrapping evasion opportunities. So I talked about the Cooper family. More recently, we learned that they were active up until 2015, and they had a settlement. So the CRA must be much more severe. And especially when it comes to the KPMG case, a public investigation is required. Or the courts should shed light on this file. But KPMG is refusing to answer your questions, refusing to shed light on the situation. And so if a court does not oblige KPMG to do so, and if KPMG is committing crimes elsewhere, because as I said, other than the Isle of Man, we do not know. In 1999, it was said
that were fully apprised of the proposed arrangement, they would seek to have offshore company treated as a deemed resident of Canada, in which case it would be taxable on its worth income. Et en 2002,
and in 2002, the same.
Pour ce qui est du
He was talking about protection given to Cooper.
Il faut faire ça dans une
He says, this must be done separately.
Advantage of not being in the public domain as are the articles. Donc on voit qu'on veut
So we see that there is a desire to hide all of this. So strict sanctions are needed. Punishments against KPMG and against the people who took advantage of those strategies. And the CRA must be much more aggressive when we're talking about tax avoidance. I would say that there are certain parts of the Income Tax Act that need to be modified. And the CRA and Justice Canada must prove, or the agency must prove, that there was tax avoidance, and it shouldn't be the taxpayer who needs to prove it. So the CRA needs to prove it, even though that is very difficult to do. So this onus needs to be removed. Thank you very much. Mr. Vaillancourt? Yes, I fully agree with what Mr. Larreau is saying. I find it totally unacceptable for a firm of this magnitude, of this that is such a publicly known company would commit this crime against the public interest of Canadians. So does the government have contracts with such a company? Could that be something? Could that be another way to punish that company? Because this company did something that is totally unacceptable in this day and age. So I think the government should be asking itself what action it can take. For example, by terminating contracts with such a company. That is something we would propose.
Merci.
Thank you. Mr. St. Jean or Mr. Bob, would you like to add something? Personally, I do not have anything else to add on that matter.
Bruce? Bruce, I see you're on mute.
Sorry. No, not really. I believe Quebec actually does have a rule that compares, tax positions taken by companies when they enter into contracts with them, I believe. So I think there might be something there to look at.
OK, donc s'inspirer de...
Okay, so draw inspiration from what's done in Quebec as well. Thank you. So, Mr. Larreau, in the KPMG case, which you referred to in your answers, you referred to what's done in the States. So to my knowledge, KPMG used a similar strategy in the States, and the heavy guns were pulled out right away, and things really didn't happen the way they went down in Canada. Could you talk about solutions that could be used by in Canada by the department or the agency? Yes. So you had KPMG that was caught in the situation, and KPMG and the individuals themselves were called before the courts, and they were fined. And there was also the possibility of a prison sentence. I don't remember all of the details, but one thing is for sure. If we compare the KPMG situation with the fiscal arbitrator situation that I mentioned, and here's some information I have on that there was a tax case, that there were aggravating circumstances and people were sent to prison. So the high level of fraudulent preparation was a factor, and an accountant's services were used. So people are sent to jail for having hired an accountant, although it was the accountant themselves that carried out the crime. And the fraud was carried out over the period of 1 year. And the person had to provide documents. That means that the person continued to carry out the crime. And KPMG carried on until 2015.
Thank you. Thank you all. I will turn to Mr. Julian next. I missed Jansen as the next questioner on the Conservative side. I don't see her in my screen. If there's a... Oh, there you are. Oh, you're in the room. Okay, great. Mr. Julian.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm also going to jump in on this Wayne Easter filibuster. I already said a few words, but I'll hopefully have a chance to say even more in the coming days. I hope that your friends and family are all healthy and safe in this pandemic. Now, I'd like to start with Mr. Larreau. Thank you very much, Mr. Larreau, for your presence here today. We have held a number of sittings where we spoke to the CRA representatives 1 year ago and last week. And we asked them why there had not been any follow-up before the courts when it came to the tax haven papers, the Panama papers, the Bahamas papers, etc. And 1 year later, nothing has changed. There's still no legal follow-up before the courts. You did not have the opportunity to give your opinion on why there was such a lack of will to sue KPMG and other accounting firms and the wealthy who evade taxes. So what was said So given what was said, rather, in 2016, if you had been given the opportunity to testify before the committee and given the situation today, can you tell us if things have changed? Well, at that time, in 2016, we did not know that the strategy had continued to be used afterwards. But today we do know. So at the time in 2016, what would I have said? Well, I'm telling you exactly that today. So I think that these would be the same arguments that I would have said if I knew at the time. But one thing is for sure. KPMG is saying that in 2003, they were saying, we understand, we've seen the error in our ways, and we've stopped. So they were recognizing, or seemed to recognize, that they had behaved wrongly. I would say criminals need to be followed up on, even if it is 18 years later. Justice must be served, even if it's 18 years later. I don't know if the reasoning is that things are not worth it, but there is a stark lack of cooperation to answer the questions that you asked. And I would say that KPMG, because of that, is not in any way acting like a firm that really does want to wash its hands of tax evasion. So I think that they are pulling the wool over your eyes, and they're only claiming that the reason they have for not answering your questions is a client confidentiality privilege. I think you should say you must answer our questions because you are not protected. Thank you. And the committee does intend to require those questions to be answered. At a recent committee meeting, we learned that one of the phony companies had dealings with KPMG this year, just a few weeks after the Fifth Estate investigation of that entire case. So for some companies, this is ongoing. Now, Mr. Larreau, you also mentioned a public investigation. In your opinion, should a public investigation also include the impact of tax evasion? For example, people who were mistreated and whose life savings were stolen from them, so that those individuals can receive justice and answers to their questions. Well, a public investigation must still be targeted. It must target certain situations in particular. You cannot have an umbrella investigation on tax evasion in general. It won't lead to anything. So something must be targeted. For example, a few of the most problematic situations, and in that, at least some progress could be made. And this would give, and rather, necessary authorities and powers must be given to commissioners and investigators, and there must be consequences for those who refuse to cooperate. So yes, there must be an investigation, but it must be targeted to particular situations. And I think I have one last question. There are agreements that the current government signs with countries that are considered tax havens. What impact does non-double taxing have when someone can fill out their tax return in the Bahamas and not be taxed at all? Well, we see this frequently in Barbados and with the Bahamas because we do have an information exchange agreement. And what does that do? Well, it means that someone who is a resident of that company, or rather the companies can send transfers to their Canadian mother companies with no fees. So it is abhorrent. So the context in which we signed these information sharing agreements has had an impact on our jurisdiction, which was not at all the objective. The objective has not been reached. You said it well. With the Panama Papers, with the Paradise Papers, we did not get the information we should have received. We only have 10% of the population of the United States, but we didn't even get 10% of the revenue back from that.
Thank you. Thank you all. Following Ms. Jansen will be Ms. Zerowitz. Ms. Jansen, all the way from the committee room in West Block. The floor is yours.
Is that good? Thank you. First, if I can just say to Mr. Easter, I have over this time that we've been working together, detected a farmer's heart in you, and very thankful for that. And when you were going to make an announcement, I thought maybe you were going to cross the floor and come to the good side, but it has been a pleasure to work with you. Thank you very much. And now back to the matter at hand, Mr. St. Jean. We are here to evaluate CRA's progress in regards to tackling tax evasion. And I kind of want to go back to 2015 when Prime Minister Trudeau said that the wealthiest Canadians were using small business tax rates to reduce their tax bills, basically, calling small business owners tax cheats. And I know at the time I was one of those people out there delivering flowers to customers in the heat of the summer, sweating it away in the old Hino truck with no air conditioning, which was, according to him, nothing more than a clever tax haven. And I have to say I was really insulted, as I believe many other small business owners were. And so now here we are in 2021, and the Liberals have thrown billions of dollars at CRA to expose these supposed small business tax cheats. And I know CFIB said at the time that his assumptions were seriously flawed. And so far, there appears to be no evidence whatsoever that he was right. Now, does it make any sense for the Liberals to have developed this tax policy and hired so many new staff based on those assumptions, especially when we see that CRA makes deals with the big tax cheats, but keeps going after the little guy?
So thank you very much for that question. I think this in the last budget. Let's see what we saw from the budget to say was talking about investing a lot more money to see in terms of tracking better to see the tax data, getting better system, getting to see more legal power to see to legal firepower to see to the CRA to see to help to see combat the tax evasion. So this is the way we read to see the announcement to see from the government to see in which we support, but to see maybe for the small business to see tax, will maybe let my colleague Bruce Bell to see the comment especially on that. And
Mr.
Bruce
Bell.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. Yeah, maybe I'll start at the first part of the question. I do know that a lot of businesses took exception, I guess, to the suggestion that they were somehow doing something wrong. And I'd agree that the majority aren't. The issue is the underground economy. There are still business people and others, or people doing activities in the underground economy. And that has been something that we were working with CRA with over the years, try to find ways to have these individuals or these companies come forward. Typically, they're individuals because corporations can be tracked, and there'll be more of that with the registry, but have these individuals come forward. We've been talking to them about education and taking advantage of the voluntary disclosure program, that kind of thing. In addition to the money in terms of verification, I think it's also important for the government to continue to try to get people out of the underground economy and come forward and become compliant taxpayers.
I wonder, maybe I'll continue with Mr. Bell. How do you think that we can expect ethical behavior from regular Canadians when our government so blatantly and repeatedly is flaunting ethics laws? Like, I don't know how we can expect Canadians to be better than the government.
Well, I don't think I'm really in a position to comment on the ethics side. I think it's incumbent on all of us to be compliant taxpayers, though. And I know that, our members, CPAs, they work with people who want to be compliant taxpayers and do the reporting that's needed to be done.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I know we've been very thankful to have accountants that were honest and wanted to help us make sure we could sleep at night because we did the right thing. Last week at Finance Committee, I asked CRA's Ted Gallivan why they were continuing to target small business owners with audits during a pandemic. And he proudly told me they had initiated a 6-month pause on those audits. Now, would you say, considering this pandemic has been going on for more than 15 months, that aggressive audits are just another way of going after the easy target rather than the big tax cheats?
That'll be the last question, Ms. Jensen. Go ahead.
Okay. I was listening to the conversation last week. I'm not sure that they were auditing small businesses generally. What Mr. Galvin said agreed with what I thought. Now they were doing reviews of the assistance programs, though, so maybe that was part of it. Reviewing the wage subsidy applications and later on the rental applications. So I'm not quite sure what the audit activity would be if it wasn't around some of the support programs.
Okay, I thank you both. Interesting information, Ms. Zerowitz, and then we'll be back to Mr. St. Marie for a short round. Julie, 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And of course, I'm going to start off in the same way that everyone else has started off. I too want to thank you so much for your leadership. You will be extraordinarily missed. You are absolutely a noble example for all MPs. And you very much set an example of the kind of MPs that we strive to be, at least I do. I'm only mad that you're leaving before we could have an oyster and lobster fest. So we might have to visit you in PEI. So I think with that, I will start with my first question. At our last session, we learned that the federal government has indeed made, over the last 5-6 years, significant investment in tackling and combating tax avoidance and evasion, over $1 billion. $5 billion we've actually recouped from that $1 billion investment. We've also heard that in terms of globally, we're ranked about 9 or 10 out of 80 in terms of identifying tax and being very successful in terms of our efforts. But of course, we could always be more effective. And I know we also heard a little bit about that there's been some of the encouraging signs that we've seen is that there's been voluntary disclosure, which has been great. And so I'd like to know, how can we encourage more voluntary disclosure? And then the second question around that is we do know that a lot of these complex cases are coming before our courts, and it's because it's cost effective for these big companies to come and actually, whether they pay $1 million or $2 million to sort of avoid paying $40 million in taxes. I wonder what more we can do to make it less attractive to actually engage in these types of tax court cases. So perhaps I could start off with Mr. St. Jean and Mr. Ball, if you have maybe if you could respond to that.
Yeah, and thank you for the question. The question of litigation, for taxes. There's a lot of dynamics around it. And many taxpayers will go to court because they've got an expectation that they will win. So they've got a valid case. People just don't do it for fun. So I think there's that dynamic at play. Maybe Bruce, as we were discussing before the testimony today, we're talking about that very question. So maybe Bruce, please.
Sure. Maybe I'll talk about the voluntary disclosure part first, and then the court case part. Voluntary disclosures are tough. You don't want to be too easy on the people who maybe weren't complying intentionally, but at the same time, you want to make sure that those that want to be compliant can come forward and do it in a reasonable way. I know I haven't done much over the years, but in the few circumstances I was helping out on a voluntary disclosure, the people it really actually brought peace of mind to them. So I think it's really an education point. On court cases, I'd agree with what Charles Antoine said. The other thing I'd add is that we have been working CPA Canada with the CRA in terms of the objection process. So that's the step before you get to court to try and head off some issues. There are cases that make it into court that are legitimate disagreements. And what we've been pushing for is to see if we can do more of that before it goes to court, have some sort of way to resolve tax disputes without going to court first.
Okay, thank you. My other question is, there was a big announcement a couple of weekends, I don't know if it was last weekend or 2 weekends ago, around the global minimum tax. Is that going to be helpful in terms of combating tax avoidance and evasion in any way?
I assume that's still to me. It should be. So the idea is that the corporate minimum tax would sort of fill in the gap. The idea being if you were paying, say, so you have a company in Canada, it's headquartered here and does business in another country, the corporate minimum tax would bring the effective tax rate up to 15%. So if the idea was that they were paying, say, 5% in the other country, then you'd be able to charge another 10% on income attributed to that country in Canada. So I think it could be effective. We'll have to see how it plays out. This is a brand new concept as well, but it has the potential, I think, to reduce the the issues under BEPS, the profit shifting. So we'll see how it works.
Last question, Julie.
Okay, great. And maybe my last question is on penalties. So do we have any other constructive ideas about how we can further punish tax evaders from a penalty perspective?
From my perspective, I don't know if I have any other. I mean, we have a criminal system and a civil penalty system. I think those things, if it's deemed that there's not enough, I think those should be reviewed probably. I don't think I have any other ideas.
It's the size of the penalty.
Yeah.
So you think we could increase and that would make it more?
That could help.
Okay.
Okay, with that, thank you all. We'll turn to 2.5-minute rounds, Mr. St. Marie, and then Mr. Julian, and then on to Mr. Kelly. Mr. St. Marie.
Oui, merci.
Thank you. If I may, regarding the question that was just raised, in Quebec, I think it's a 30% penalty, and it's 0% at the CRA when it comes to voluntary disclosures. And if we take the KPMG situation in the States, it was a 50% penalty. So we could draw inspiration from that, I would say to my colleague Julie. So I have a question for Mr. Larreau, Mr. Vaillancourt, and our guests from CPA can also respond. In the Weinberg-Borchild case in Montreal, there were thousands of small business owners that were impacted, and I was very touched by Ms. Watson. She was the witness at our committee. It was appalling what happened. $500 million disappeared. What can we do? What can the government do? What can the minister do? What needs to change for this sort of situation not to recur and for us to be able to find the money? So CBC Radio-Canada comes up with very compelling arguments saying that, oh, we think that KPMG was behind it because they set up a shell company at the same time as those 4 corporations. And we've been told that consultations of documents over the past 10 years were carried out. We're wondering what can be done first for justice to be served in this case and for it never again to happen. Mr. Larreau first, please. You are on mute. So what we're seeing here is an information gap. We do not know what is happening. And I'll say it again, we cannot control what we do not see. So accountability must be required, and the courts must require accountability as well. And if that were the case, firms would have no choice but to comply with the court's requests. Otherwise, penalties would be severe. Even in cases where we only when we can have access to all of the information can justice be served. When we do not have the information, we cannot carry out the proper analysis. when people do have the information, they must disclose it. It must be forced to disclose it. Thank you, Mr. Vaillancourt. Well, the problem is that it has become possible for absolutely colossal sums of money to just disappear into thin air. And one of the solutions we see to this is a beneficial ownership, where there is no number where it's impossible to find the identity of the person. Because that is an absolutely unacceptable way to make huge sums of money disappear. I think this type of solution needs to be put in place as quickly as possible for it to be the most effective as possible. And I won't repeat myself from earlier, but in our view, this is something fundamental and very pressing. On that same subject, the House has just adopted a motion by Stéphane Bergeron, my colleague. Mr. Saint-Antoine, yes, I was going to agree with Mr. Vaillancourt with what he was saying. So new means need to be put in place, and it won't be perfect because, of course, there are criminals will exist, but risks must be minimized. So we fully agree with that recommendation. But the problem, if I may, is that if you have the Isle of Man Corporation hidden on the Isle of Man and that there's no disclosure made, then no one will be able to trace it. It's a game of hide and seek. And in hide and seek, the name of the game is to hide. So even if you have the most state-of-the-art registry in the whole world, it doesn't oblige people to sign the registry. Thank you.
Thank you all. Mr. Julian, to about 3 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to ask my next questions to Mr. Vaillancourt and Mr. Saint-Jean and Mr. Ball. As has been pointed out, the North Shield and the CINAR frauds are massive amounts of money taken from Canadians, wiping out their life savings, $500 million. And yet the government has done nothing to follow up on that fraud. But it's really the tip of the iceberg. I mean, the Parliamentary Budgetary Officer has evaluated what Canadians lose every year in terms of tax dollars at $25 billion every year. When we talk about all of the problems Canadians are facing, lack of affordable housing, struggling to do the transition to clean energy, having safe drinking water, Indigenous communities, $25 billion a year could resolve so many of the issues that Canadians are having to confront. So my question is twofold. First off, what should the government be doing now to get to the bottom of the CINAR and North Shield frauds and the KPMG linkage with the Isle of Man? And secondly, are you in agreement that these are massive amounts of $25 billion a year in taxpayers' money that are essentially being lost to these overseas tax havens and overseas frauds, money that could be so important for actually helping raise the quality of life of so many Canadians? Mr. Vaillancourt?
Yes, well, here's what I have to say on this, and I'm not really an expert in the matter, but as a citizen, I will say that, Mr. Julian, you are completely right. There will be high amounts of investments needed for the next few years. The ecological transition, that is going to require significant public funds. And when we see that these monumental amounts of money are disappearing and we don't have any means to get them back, we need to double down the efforts. And I think all sorts of organizations like Échec aux Paradis Fiscaux, which is an anti-tax haven group in Quebec, they have recommendations, and I don't have time to explain everything in the little time that I have, but everything's there. And I think that the CRA is capable of finding solutions. So this is a very pressing problem. Action must be taken because major changes are needed right away. We are in a major transition, and we need all of our public funds. This must not happen again, as you said, Mr. Julian, and I think that elected members have the responsibility to see to it.
I believe Mr. Ball or Mr. St. Jean wanted to add something.
Maybe just a point to say on the $25 billion. No doubt it is a very important number. It's a very, very important. It's important that everybody pay their fair share of taxes. It's a civic duty. So there's many things that can be done to say from an enforcement perspective, but it's also a question to say of education. We firmly believe to say that having the more education in terms of why it is important that people pay their fair share of taxes, and having those discussion, and to change this behavior that enables that kind of. So there's a question of social education that might be helpful to close that gap, because that money will be needed, as Mr. Vaillancourt said. We need that money if we're going forward. So the more we can do as a society, the better we will all be.
Okay, thank you. We're back into 5-minute rounds, starting with Mr. Kelly and then on to Ms. Kotrakis. Pat?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Leroux, what, if any, changes are needed to Canadian law to enable vigorous prosecution of overseas tax evaders?
Je pense que la réponse.
I think that the answer lies in penalties. Penalties when it comes to legislative measures, and the answer also lies in the latitude of the CRA in the financial means invested in the CRA to detect tax fraud, but in particular,
I guess my question though was really like, are there changes in law necessary, or is it a matter of I guess you're getting into other reasons why they may not that are not rooted in changes in law, so that there are no changes in law needed. It's just a question of resources, or a question of willingness, or a question of raising penalties.
Okay.
So there is a provision in the Income Tax Act that targets those who participate in unacceptable activities, but they're not criminal penalties, they're administrative penalties. But it's as if the tax abusers, we are telling them this is the only penalty that you will have if you commit a crime, but that's not right. But the disposition in the Act allows them also to be targeted.
Okay, thank you. Mr. St. Jean, we've seen over the last Parliament and reports and whatnot in this one, just of terrible problems of basic competence at the CRA. The Auditor General's report on call centers that pointed out a full 30% of the answers given out at that call center were false information or erroneous information given to taxpayers. How does this basic, we've also seen actually how their website would have incorrect information, that if tax filers followed the guidance on their website, that they would end up being actually in breach of the Tax Act. How does the quality of information and misinformation given from the department itself erode confidence in the system and in fact the very nature of the self-reporting system that we rely on?
Thank you for this question. No doubt to say when we see those reports from the AG and others to say this is not helpful. This is for the CRA, like other departments and all of us, need to do better. So they're investing to say in more people. They're investing in new information system to say that the.
Okay, sorry, my question was not really. I guess yes, there are recommendations were made to fix the problem, but I'm getting to kind of some of the root causes of non-compliance. Is there a risk when the system doesn't work that that it actually erodes the incentive to comply.
As we've said a number of times, Mr. Members, you see, we find the current tax code very, very complex. This committee has made a recommendation many times. By making it more complex, you're making it more difficult to comply. The average Canadian's got great difficulty. 3,000-page code. It's very difficult to comply. So that is one thing to say that really does not help compliance.
Yeah, indeed. Maybe a last question. I'm not sure even who to put it to. I'll maybe go back to Mr. Leroux on this. What do you make of the voluntary disclosure process? We heard from officials last week that they were not pursuing as many voluntary disclosure settlements as other jurisdictions, and they cited that as justification for the relatively low numbers of the non numbers of convictions in the case of the Panama Papers. So, what do you make of this? Should we feel better that they're not letting these individuals off with voluntary disclosure agreements? And just be more patient on actual prosecution, or is this just an outright failure to do anything about the Panama Papers in particular?
Maybe I could ask my colleague just to answer directly the question on the voluntary disclosure. Please, Bruce.
Sure.
We'll go to Mr. Ball first, and then to Mr. Leroux. Go ahead, Mr. Ball.
Okay, thanks. The voluntary, as I sort of alluded to before, I think the issue that the CRA has been facing is it's kind of a sort of a either or kind of thing. On one hand, they want people to come forward. If they're going to be penalized, they aren't going to come forward. So if someone's thinking that they'd like to become compliant, assessing them a penalty if they do is not going to help bring them around. But I think the flip side is that people were critical of the CRA, that they were letting voluntary disclosures on international issues. And I think that's what the CRA people were talking about last week was tightening up the rules so that that doesn't happen. In other words, people who are doing international in particular, and there were some other things that they tighten up on the rules.
Mr. Leroux, to the last question of Pat.
La divulgation volontaire.
Voluntary disclosures will be done by someone who feels the heat. The CRA is not very renowned for this. So why, if we take someone who hid their money abroad, why would they agree to voluntary disclosures when they know full well that the CRA will not take the measures to chase after them outside the country? Voluntary disclosures, people agree to that because they know that they will not be detected outside of the country. So they are not compelled to participate in voluntary disclosures. There are, of course, voluntary disclosures, and there were major ones in the past. We remember Brian Mulrooney, who voluntarily disclosed income and who paid half of the payable tax years after the fact. So this is sad, but this is in the living memory of many people here. We also remember in the United States, there were very ad hoc voluntary disclosure programs. They would open up windows. They would say, you have 3 months to voluntarily disclose your income, and then the window will close, and if you have not yet disclosed. And now they do so in a much freer manner. But there will be no voluntary disclosures until the CRA is more proactive in detecting international fraud.
Thank you all. We will go to Ms. Katrakis, followed by Mr. McFast, and then Mr. McLeod will have to wrap it up, and then we'll go to Gabriel's motion. Ms. Katrakis, 5 minutes tight.
Tight. Well, I'm going to take a few seconds and thank you, Mr. Chair, for being an amazing colleague and guide to me. This is my first mandate, as you know. I was elected in October 2019. This is the first time I'm sitting on a standing committee at Parliament, and I couldn't be luckier or more honored to count you as my new friend and mentor, and I will come and visit you in PEI. But as elections are going to happen in 2023, I still have another 2 years to serve with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think at this point, it's important to put on record that, once we've identified that fraud has happened, then the investigation is not taken over by the CRA, but it's referred to the RCMP to do further investigation. And I'd like to ask either Mr. Leroux or Mr. St. Jean or Mr. Ball to, kind of weigh in on that and say, would you agree with that statement that there's only so far that the CRA can go with investigations and it then goes over to the RCMP?
I would be more of the mind that the CRA must require information more. Under Section 239 of the Income Tax Act, the CRA can submit criminal complaints against any tax criminal. That's under Section 239. And if it were found to be a criminal situation, Justice Canada would take it from there. And the RCMP does get involved. Well, I'm not sure about the details of that, but one thing is sure, we need more information at this time, whether it be information that the RCMP gets or the CRA gets. But I think that the CRA has much more work to do on that. And there's also the need for the will to act. And at this time, that is lacking when we see all of the transactions that are being carried out with taxpayers. And when we see, of course, the lack of willingness to prosecute KPMG, all of this shows me that for the time being, CRA is not adequately playing its role.
I'd like to hear the thoughts of Mr. St. Jean and Mr. Ball on the same question.
Maybe I'll jump in on this one. I think I generally agree with that. I think CRA stays involved, though, because they have the expertise on tax matters. I'll be honest with you, I'm not quite sure how other legal authorities are brought into the process, but I think CRA remains part of it. One of the key things is the CRA's rules in terms of gathering information and that sort of thing change significantly if they think criminal charges are involved. But I'll have to be honest, I've never dealt with this, so I really don't know how the process actually works.
Thank you for that. And I'll continue with Mr. St. Jean, Mr. Ball. What are the most common forms of aggressive tax planning we are seeing today? And what steps should the federal government be taking to close loopholes that support these tax planning strategies?
On that notice, I would turn to my colleague, my tax expert.
It's actually difficult to say what is, I think, are the key ones. Maybe I'll deal more with what should be done because it's probably the same sort of steps no matter what the issue is. We've talked about tax evasion a lot. We've talked about tax avoidance. I mean, strictly speaking, tax avoidance is reducing your tax legally, at least under the international definition. CRA uses a slightly different one. Then there's aggressive avoidance. And I think the rule there that's big is the general anti-avoidance rule. That's the rule that will apply if your tax position technically meets the rules, but it's outside the object and spirit of the tax rules. And I think that'll be something that the government's looking into more. Again, using Quebec as an example, there are consequences around the general anti-avoidance rule that go further than the federal rules. Yep. So I would imagine that would be something that the federal government will be looking at when they do their review.
And from the private sector perspective, and I heard in your testimony, Mr. St. Jean, that we need, an overhaul of our tax, rules, and there's a reform that's needed. So, in your view and your experience, how has Canada's taxation system because it must have evolved over the past 20 years. Have there been any major changes that we have seen in the system?
Yeah, let's see. Maybe just a few comments. I said again, I'm not the tax expert. My colleague is. But every year, the tax code is getting more complex. You're adding pages every year. So, in the last 20 years, I don't know how many pages have been added to the. But they've been new to say provision in the tax act. So, it is. It's not getting more simple year after year. It's just getting more complex. So that question is this problem is not going to go away until, let's see, I think my colleague was talking about last time the tax review was done in 1967, if I recall, and it took 10 years back then. So it's more than 50 years. The last 20 years just got more complex to deal with. So that's probably the comments I would say, but maybe my colleagues could add another layer.
Yeah, I think the issue is there's been more changes and they do layer them on top. I think that's the issue. So like we were talking about interest deductibility last week with a group, and there's 3 or 4 different sets of rules that apply to international when you're talking about international interest deductions. And, you know, rather than putting different rules on top of each other, does it make sense to go back and look at it from the beginning? I almost look at it like if you're talking about computer software, you keep adding different layers of programming on top of the old, and eventually it breaks down. I think that's what we need to do is sort of reboot the tax system and start from scratch, and then see what makes sense.
That'd be an interesting reboot for sure. That's good terminology, Mr. Bell. We'll turn to Mr. Fast, and Mr. McLeod will have to wrap it up. Ed, you're on.
Well, Wayne, I'm going to call you Wayne because I would be remiss if I didn't join the chorus of accolades that you've received today. And first of all,
don't you remember I used to give you a hard time when you were Minister of International Trade?
Well, I was just going to mention that. I do echo the sentiments of my colleagues here and just affirm you as being someone who is able to understand and elevate humanity above the politics of this job. It's something very few people really understand. You've been able to do it successfully, and the fact that here at committee we actually get along and you are even-handed, you understand the role that we play as elected officials. But I also wanted to highlight the fact that you and I have been adversaries. You were my critic when I was trade minister. And even then, on those occasions when I appeared at committee and you had to grill me or in the House of Commons, you were always fair. Always fair. You were tough, but you know what? I never felt that you were an enemy. I always felt that we were actually on the same side in the sense that both of us were trying to promote Canada's trade interests and just needed to fine tune some of these policies a little bit. So that really is a credit not only to your skill as a critic and as a chair of this committee, but to your character. And I just want to affirm you in that. You can go into retirement knowing you have the respect of all of your colleagues in the House of Commons.
Thank you.
So, getting to my question, I'm going to direct my question to Mr. Ball and Mr. Saint-Jean. Yours is the preeminent organization representing professional accountants in Canada, correct?
Yes, indeed.
All right. So is KPMG a member of your organization or still a member?
KPMG is members of the CPA Canada are individual members.
Right. So KPMG is an individual member of your organization.
Members of KPMG's, not KPMG itself.
Got it. So is every accountant in Canada required to be a member of your organization?
Every CPA in Canada is deemed a member of CPA Canada by virtue of their belonging to a provincial institute in which they are registered to say as a CPA.
Okay, but you don't exercise any disciplinary oversight over individual accountants, correct?
This is the responsibility of the provincial institute, l'Ordre des comptables agréés, as per the
professional chartered accountants.
The country works. See, professions are managed, say, by the province.
And the reason I asked that question is because, you know, we've spent a fair bit of time today already and the rest of our meetings on tax evasion, talking about what the government's role is. How can we do this better? Is it a matter of resources? I think there is some evidence that it is a matter of resources. Is it a matter of simplifying the tax system? I would agree with you, that is required. But there is certainly a role for your profession itself to play, whether it's your provincial, professional society, or whether it's your national organization. Are there things that your profession can do to help government ensure that the tax laws of our country are complied with, not only by their clients, but by your members themselves, by the accountants themselves?
Yes, to say on this, every CPA in Canada, by virtue of their belonging to a provincial institute, they're subject to a code of conduct, which is quite strict in terms of behaviors and expectation of the city. Like the CPA, like every Canadian, are expected to abide by the law. And also the city, they're expected to abide by the code of conduct, which the city that the city make sure that the CPA don't get involved with tax evasion. That's a criminal act. The city, you cannot be a CPA in doing that.
But is it safe to assume that the tax avoidance and perhaps tax evasion strategies that are employed by companies often involve the enabling work of accountants?
It could be non-CPA accountants. They can be many different kind of people. Not necessarily CPAs. It can be anyone that can work in this field. It's in Canada.
So do you know at all whether KPMG has been disciplined in any way for its role in the offshore tax strategies that it's now implicated in?
That would be for provincial. We're not aware of this as CPA Canada because that's not, we're not privy to this information. That would be the provincial institute or law that would be able to provide this information.
Okay. I'll stay with both of you.
I want to go back to it.
I want to go back to the question about simplifying the tax system. I think all of us can probably come to agreement that a simplified tax system would also lead to less tax avoidance and less tax evasion. Could you add to the number of suggestions that have already been made as to how our tax system could be simplified? Number of suggestions have been made. I'd love to hear the two of you expand on that.
Maybe I could turn the table to my friend, Bruce, on that very question.
Yeah, thanks. As I mentioned before, we think reviewing the entire system makes sense, but to have that as a lens in terms of is the system too complicated for people to comply with? That has to be one of the key questions as you look. I wouldn't be looking for one-off fixes. I'd be looking to work on the whole system and try to simplify it in general. In terms of, I agree completely with the idea that a simplified system will increase compliance. I think it's important to understand why compliance or non-compliance happens. It could be tax evasion, but it could also be that people either are overwhelmed and can't understand it, or they do something wrong because it's too complicated. So I think those two things are the evasion has to be dealt with, but those other two things will be aided if the tax system is simplified.
Okay, thank you all. And turning lastly to Mr. McLeod, and I'm sorry, Michael, you're only going to get 4 minutes, so we've got to get to this motion. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the presenters today. Very interesting to listen to the wealth of experience and the knowledge you have on taxes, tax evasion. In the fall of 2020, in the economic statement, our government committed to invest $606 million over 5 years, starting in 2021, to close the high net worth compliance gap, to strengthen technical support for high risk audits and enhance criminal investigations program. And we heard today that funding, the commitment by our government is still too low. And I heard and listened with real interest that the previous government, the Harper government, had made cuts to the CRA. It had cut resources. And I'm just wondering if you could tell us, some of you that talked about it, I think Claude and Andre talked about the cuts. What was the impact of those cuts? I mean, if we're putting money into it and still not enough, what was the impact when resources were taken away? Are we still trying to play catch up as a result? You know, do we not have all the technology because of that, or maybe we don't have enough staff? Maybe the resources we have is inadequate to do our job. If somebody, if you want to take a crack at giving me some answers to that.
Maybe just I could give a comment or two to City. You know, the evolution of technology in the last number of years has just been extraordinary. So the ability to see to do things in City is just very different from what it was 5 years ago. When we're talking about to see new tools that are needed to see to combat to see tax evasion effectively, I think alluded to AI a bit earlier on. I think these are some of the tools to see that we need to equip the all to see our department to see with to see the getting the talent to see to also being able to see to deploy it and use it to see the this talent is there's not an overabundance of this talent in Canada, as you've heard us say many times. There's the talent war. See, the ability to attract the people, the talent, is a challenge for not only for government but also for private sector. So it's not a problem that's going to go away easily to get the city all the people that are needed with the talent needed to do so. But government needs to still keep trying at to see at sourcing the talent, sourcing the people, sourcing the technology to help the city, because the other side is also investing to see and trying to find ways to see to beat the system. So it's a never-ending battle to try to see to combat it. So maybe I could turn to my colleague Bruce to see if he'd like to compliment us.
Yeah, thank you. I guess going to the original question, I don't think we can talk to what was the impact of previous decisions around funding of the CRA, but you know, based on the discussions we do have with them, they are trying new things in terms of dealing with issues around non-compliance, especially. You know, we both, you know, in terms of penalty, but also in terms of getting people to come forward as well. So I think there have been improvements over the years. And I think the other thing is it's not going to be sort of one and done. It's a process. So, you know, the CRA will have to continue to look at what they're doing and see if it's working or see if they have to do new things. I don't think you can say we found the answer now we'll carry on. It's going to be an ongoing process.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Valencourt, and then we'll have to go to the next thing.
J'ai parlé de cette question.
Yes, I spoke about that matter in my speech at the beginning. I was saying that the Harper cuts were carried out under austerity context. And currently, with the money being put back into the CRA, it is now possible for us to be at just about the same level as before, even though the needs are much more urgent and greater, and that the situation is complex and that technology has changed. We have access to much more information than before, but there are still cases that are extremely difficult to process, whether it be tax leaks or when it comes to information. So the level needs not to be reached, but to be surpassed. We must go much farther, that is to say, allocate much more funding. And in the United States, I think what's happening is that the Biden administration has understood that in the current urgent situation and for one reason it's because of the COVID, that money is needed, and the only way it will be possible to go after that money will be to pay for more specialists who will be able to carry out investigations to go after those tax evaders. So that is something that's very important in our mind.
Okay, look, on behalf of the committee, I think we had a lot of information here this afternoon. We'll have to go to the minutes to really delve into it. So I certainly want to, on behalf of the committee, thank all our witnesses for appearing and providing the information based on your life's experience. So thank you very much for that. Mr. St. Marie, we'll turn to you. I know members have received your motion, so we'll give the floor to you.
Oui, merci, monsieur.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all of our witnesses. Before I table my motion, I would like to put it into context. This Thursday, we will be continuing our study on the same subject at our committee. And the objective of that meeting is to target key witnesses in our study. And based on my understanding, up until now, the 6 witnesses that were named in the CBC article have not accepted their invitation yet. 2 of those witnesses, or one of the person refused the invitation right off the bat, and that person does not have Canadian citizenship. And the others named in the motion have not refused. I understand that our timeline is tight, and ideally the committee could adopt an invitation motion. But since the meeting is coming up on Thursday, and after that we just have one meeting left and it will be with the ministers, I am proposing to compel them to appear with this motion. So this, I want to specify, does not target those who have already refused their invitation, but given that the timeline is very tight, and given that to date we have not received an answer to the invitation, I want to ensure that we do get key witnesses in this extremely important study, and that is why the motion is as follows. That Mr. Michael Morris, Mrs. Susan Gibbons, Mr. William Maycock, and Mr. Serge Bilodeau be summoned to appear before the committee and give evidence on the CRA's efforts to combat tax avoidance and evasion at its June 17th, 2021 meeting, and that the committee directs Mr. Ian Morris to forward the contact information of Mr. Michael Morris to the clerk of the committee so he may issue a summons for him. So I hereby table my motion.
Okay, it's up for discussion. Does anyone want to speak on it? Mr. Julian.
I support it for reasons that Mr. Sainte-Marie just gave. It's important for the committee for us to reiterate the importance of those invitations.
Okay, is anyone else? Are we going to a vote? Or
just a vote, Mr. Chair, I think is fine.
Okay. Then, Mr. Clerk, can you poll the committee membership on the motion?
Mr. Chair, this may be unanimous. I didn't hear anybody object, and for what it's worth, I know I'll be voting in favor of the motion. I expect my colleagues will as well. Unless there's an objection, I would suggest the motion may just carry.
Okay, then I don't see any objections. Then the motion is in fact carried. The clerk will. He's already given me a little note on what the summons would look like. We may have a little bit of trouble with an address or two, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So the motion is carried. Mr. Kelly, I think you have your hand up.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I just wondered if, with the urgency of the days that are so limited here, can you tell us if you have confirmation of the acceptance of our invitations to both ministers for next Tuesday?
Mr. Clerk, you'll have to answer on that. I'm not. We don't have. Acceptance as yet. I understand it's under discussions, but we will. We'll push the issue. Pat.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. With that, then thank you, folks. Very interesting exchange here today, and thank you for all the comments. I get embarrassed by those comments, so a little bit. Thank
you.
You.
Got an extra
Mr.
7
Chair,
minutes to work on your speech.
Yeah.
Before we formally adjourn, I think you're first up in the speeches tonight. Is that correct?
I am, and I got a little work to do here.
Excellent. And look,
right.
Do a filibuster.
If you ever had
Do
a
a
chance
filibuster.
to, if you had a chance to do some funny business as chair, everybody's in love with you tonight. This was your opportunity.
That was, yeah. Thank you. Meeting adjourned, all. Thank you all. Bye bye.
Wayne, they were talking about Gerard.
Thank you.